Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. And today on the show, we have Pat Shand. And Pat is an interesting cat. He, until recently, was under an exclusive comic writing contract with ZeneSCOPE. He was also one of their editors, and he also writes books in the Marvel Universe for Joe Books. So he does two things that I desperately want to do, which is write novels and graphic novels. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to have him on the show to pick his brain about how he balances writing novels and writing graphic novels. But he talks about a ton of other amazing stuff too. And before we get to it, I want to remind you that we have a cool Facebook group called Authors and Creators Making Money Selling Books, which is completely free and you can get to by going to writingandsellingcommunity.com or looking up Authors and Creators Making Money Selling Books on Facebook. It's awesome if you're an author or creator who wants to make more money selling books. There's over 400 people in less than a month. We are growing rapidly, and we would love to have you come as well. So head on over to writingandsellingcommunity.com today and come join us. All right, that being said, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Pat. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
I am passionate right now about making sure that every story that means something to me gets out there, because I had been working exclusively for ZeneSCOPE for between like 4.5 and 5 years now. So I'd always been tempering my passion and my stories through a company. So now that I'm on my own and freelance, every time I sit down to write a story, I just want to make sure that I'm telling the exact story that I want to and spending my creative time in a way that is true to myself. And as far as media that I'm consuming too, I'm always I'm getting pickier and pickier with the media that I consume, because I do spend a lot of time watching TV and watching YouTube, and I'm getting obsessed with watching creators who you can tell, like yourself actually, are super passionate about what they do in that way. So yeah, I mean, right now, if I had to say what I'm obsessed with, I would say passion.
Right. So I think that's so important. The older I get, the more I kind of fall in line with what you're saying, because you know, there's so much bubblegum popcorn like BS around that, like, my whole thing, the thing I like reading, and the reason I like reading and consuming media is to like see inside someone else's brain, like one person's brain or a couple of people's brains, and it's like see how they view the world. And a lot of stuff just isn't designed for me. Like, they're not designed with that emotion in mind. They're designed to be sort of this paint by numbers system. So I totally agree with you. Like, I find myself watching way less stuff now and consuming way less media, but then getting really, really passionate about like when I find something that is like incredibly unique and speaks like to what that creator's view of the world is.
Yes, and have you noticed this tendency right now to hate watch? Because I've been seeing on Twitter, everyone is hating all these shows, but still watching them, you know? Like today, everyone is talking about the hallway scene in the Defenders trailer, and all I can think about is, if you don't like these shows, then why are you spending all of your time that could be put towards something you love, watching this?
Well, here's what I think. Because I cut the cord. I stopped watching shows. I even cut the cord with Netflix, really. I mean, not even really. I stopped watching Netflix too. And the reason that I did that, what I found is I was watching these shows just because like I had always watched these shows, and it wasn't until I stopped watching them or stopped reading that comic or stopped consuming that media that I was like, oh my God, why was I doing that? But I think that that goes to a lot of like why these people are hate watching. They may have loved something before, and they just need a little break from it before they realize like how crazy that thing was.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, what I think is just that there is so much to love, and there's so much to love that you can't even see everything that you want to see. I have this list of shows and books and comics that I want to see and read, and I'll never get to all of them. So I just can't fathom this idea that we're spending time consuming media that we hate, and largely, it's all over the place. I just like, if I don't like a trailer, I'll turn the trailer off and not watch the show. But but I've seen people watch a trailer, hate tweet it, then watch a show and live hate tweet it. It's like, come on, there is so much good out there. And as a creator who I feel is making some of that good, I just kind of fear that someone will hate read or hate watch my stuff. I mean, it's like, I don't know. If I didn't like something, I think I would just move on. I hope I would just move on.
Yeah, but that's hard. Like, it's hard to go find new things. I mean, have you ever, like, 'cause I have Hulu now. I don't have Netflix, but I do still have Hulu. And it's almost impossible to find new things that are good. It's much easier to just look at the thing that's at the top of the Hulu feed and be like, all right, I'm going to try that.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that has led me to some good stuff, though. But I totally hear you. Yes.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the fact that, like, life is hard, and, like, when you get home at the end of a day, you don't want to scroll through Netflix, even though there may be something amazing on Netflix. You just want to watch the thing that you know you like, because life is hard enough as it is.
That's true. That is true.
And what I hope for myself as a creator, is that I can kind of weasel my way into a rotation once, and then people go, oh yeah, that is good, and I become the thing that they go, I know this is going to be good, so I'm just going to buy it, because it's easier to find this thing that I know I like than to go and search for another hard thing.
Right. I totally hear you, because I think that these days, more and more, because you can just go on Twitter or Facebook and follow or even befriend the creator of the thing that you like. I think that people are looking for relationships with shows, like you were saying, and an ongoing thing, even if they don't like it. So people, now that creators are more accessible, like you and I speak to everyone on our social media. I think that people are looking for that kind of thing. And if we can deliver consistency and be a consistent quality creative force, then I think that we're in a good place, because people are looking for that kind of dependent relationship on media.
Yeah, I mean, this is why when people say I don't understand, like they say, like, I don't want to push my information out to people, or like I don't want to like engage that much or spend that much time, like I'm worried about like pushing people away. I go, then why, like, what is the point of the whole thing? Like, if you're scared to like reach out to the people who have engaged, followed you, friended you on Facebook, joined your mailing list, then you're doing them a disservice, because they're asking for you to have a relationship. Like, that's the whole point of them giving you your information, is like they want a relationship with you. And what I have found is, the longer that I've gone on in this business, the more people want a relationship with you, and the more when you like go away for a week, let's say you were on vacation for a month and you just didn't send out a mailing list something, or you didn't tweet a lot, or they couldn't get in touch with you, like they come to you at a show and go, where have you been? And true. Like, yeah. I always find I always want to, like, the relationship with my fans that I have now, which is like, there are some people that I am as excited to see at a show or talk to than my best friend I've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, that's really real. To me, that's how you get the. To me, when someone's like, well, how do I separate myself in this world? I'm like, well, like, you do know how easy it is to find information? It's so fucking easy. Yeah. The hard thing is to find good information. And when you find good information, you hold on to it. Like, I subscribed to the Washington Post. Spend $100 a year subscribing to the Washington Post. You know how easy media is to find? It's so easy. Why do I spend $100 in the Washington Post? Because every time there was an article that was interesting for the past 3 months, I would click on it, and it would always be the Washington Post.
Yes.
And that,
I hear you, and to kind of expound on that too, I think one of the reasons that people are afraid to reach out is because they see some people being a bit critical of people who are too forward. But I think what they don't realize is that reaching out and that kind of constant being there, that being present isn't what's too forward. I think the people that are too forward kind of stand out. They're the kind of people who add you on Facebook, and as soon as you accept it, you get a message, a blank, like, kind of form message about liking their page. Like, that's what's too forward. And I think that some people are scared of being that, when really they just need to be themselves and be personal and make personal connections. That's what people are searching for.
Yeah, because people are looking for those personal connections. And honestly, what I feel, one of the reasons I think people hate watch these shows is because at least they know people will talk about it. Like, they have a community of people to talk about this thing. Even if they hate it, like, they will be able to go online and search out this show and find communities of people that they can engage with. And even if they hate the show, they want to feel like they are engaging with something.
That's very true. And I think that while that fills a void for them, I think it also causes a problem too. Because recently, every time I go on Twitter to search something that I liked, to engage with people who liked it too, all I see is people hating it. And that might speak to my taste. I'm not sure. But every time I love something, I'll type it into Twitter, type the hashtag, and see what's going on. And it's just people hating it. So they're connecting in that way. But I think that people who just enjoy something, I think that they are kind of reaching for something, because the conversation, I think, in social media about mass media is kind of veering in a more negative and critical direction. And I think that being critical is great if you're talking about something actually worth being critical about. But I don't know. I feel like people are trying to distill the most negative and most retweetable reaction, which might scare off people who want to engage in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean So this is why I am such a big fan of mailing lists, and I send out one a week to people that are on my mailing list, and I try to curate content which is positive and the kinds of stuff that I would want to see and the kind of stuff that I would want to engage with, because like I want people to search for me as a creator, see things that they like, and then say, okay, he's been doing this for a long time. If I follow him or subscribe to his mailing list, he's going to send me information that I want, and I can then be a bastion in this big world of like hate or love or things that like whatever it is. But I can attract the people who are right for me, just like somebody else can attract somebody that's right for them. Like, I would say, well, where is the list on Twitter of the people that are engaging with that community positively? Because there's got to be like some list that somebody can join, or some like group that somebody can join that's full of like positive messages about that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then like if you can be that group, or like think of yourself as that group, then you'll be able to attract fans who also want to discuss positively in that, or the way that you want to, because you could also have a group bashing that show
right.
as well.
Sure.
So how do you? So you have. I'm not jealous of a lot of people who do different kinds of work, but like I'm a little bit jealous of you, because you do a thing that I always that I want to do, or that I do, which is like you work successfully in comics and you work successfully as a novelist. Could you talk a little bit about like how you were able to bridge that gap between comics and novels and how that's worked for you?
Yeah, it was crazy random happenstance pretty much. I never really set out to do novels once I started comics, because to be honest, when I first wanted to write, I only ever pictured novels. I wrote novels as a kid. I have these horrible Harry Potter fanfic full novels that I printed out on these hardbound copies that no one will ever see. But when I started to get into my college years, I moved toward script, because it was easier to get things produced, because I was in New York. People who liked my writing wanted to see me do plays. So I went into the theater area. And then from there, I started to get into comics. I hadn't read comics growing up, really. So So yeah, I was doing comics for the first time ever. I was reading and enjoying comics. I felt like I had discovered this brand new thing that I'd been missing for my whole life. So when I settled into comics, I kind of thought that maybe in the future I would do novels. I hadn't been actively pursuing it because I was so fascinated by the creation of comics. So what happened was that I had gotten the Charmed gig. That was one of my first ever gigs. I had gotten that gig in 2011, my first year writing comics, to write the season 10 series of Charmed. It didn't actually happen until 2013, though. So when that was coming out, a different company called Joe Books was starting to work on putting out Charmed ebooks. And the current writer, who was a friend of mine, introduced me to Joe Books because he was kind of done with his time on Charmed. So he said, "This is Pat. He writes the comic, and I think that he'd be interested in the novels as well." And yeah, I sent some older samples of prose. I didn't know what would happen with that, but they liked the samples, had me pitch a few Charmed novels. Those came to fruition, and I was aware that they were doing Marvel novels, but I didn't pitch for them until one day they invited me to pitch for Iron Man, Avengers, and Spider-Man, and I couldn't believe that. I was scared to even reach out to them because I thought that I was like their Charmed guy, and I wanted to work on making good Charm novels first and then work up to that. But when they introduced the idea, I was like, absolutely. So it's pretty much just been people giving me a chance because now I'm pursuing novels hardcore. But it's definitely hard to balance working full-time in comics and also producing multiple novels per year. But it's what I wanted to do to begin with. So it's definitely a dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, you have 3 novels coming out this year. Is that true? Is that right?
Yes, I think 3 because, all right, so they were all written mostly last year. I wrote Iron Man and Avengers last year and Guardians this year. And Guardians is going to come out first, and then Iron Man and Avengers, maybe a 4th one. And those 2 Charm novels still haven't come out. They're holding those back. There's some licensing deals there. But it would be crazy if they put them out this year because that would mean between 5 or 6 novels this year in the year of my first novel. But yeah, so at least 3, maybe more.
All right, so that begs the question: how do you write 3 novels or 4 novels a year? Like, that seems insane to me. That's 1 a quarter. Yeah, that's like a month to plan, a month to make, and a month to edit. Like, how do you keep that schedule up while you're also working in comics?
Well, all right. So here is a secret as far as the novels go. Most of those I wrote fully in 1 month. Iron Man, I had about a month and a half, but Avengers and Guardians were 1 month apiece, as were the Charm novels, because the deadlines were just so intense and just it was a matter of either saying no to a dream or just doing it. So I just sat down and I just did it. Yeah, I can't say how I did it because I was kind of my schedule was thrown off because of it. I mean, still, I don't like to say this because I would prefer to be up in the morning, but my schedule is still recovering from Guardians. I finished Guardians about 2 months ago, I believe. And some days I'm getting up at 3 p.m. because I can't sleep until 7 p.m. No, 7 a.m. because my schedule is so messed up from just no sleep or late sleep from Guardians. So it's definitely throwing me off, but I'm still able to get my writing done during the times of day and or night that I set out to do them. But I'm going to try to course correct, but the answer is just really throwing everything to hell and just committing to it.
Yeah, just sheer force of will, it sounds like. Because I'm a member of some like novelist groups, and a lot of them are pumping out like a full novel a month. And I I'm like, how can you make 12 a year? Or even, like, I have problems making 1 or 2 a year. Like, the years that I make 2 are like very few and far between, and they're always like like 260,000 word ones. And I have like some people making 80 to 120,000 word novels like every month, and I'm like, how do you breathe?
It's intense. It's all encompassing, but that deadline helps, man. It gives me something to work toward. It gives me like the absolute end goal because, all right, so those were deadline dreams. Now I have non-deadline dreams because I took this meeting with my ideal agent. She's an agent that if you go into Target's book section, I'd say 75% of the YA books are all her writers. I would love to land a deal with her. I would love to. And she requested to see 5 samples of mine, 5 full 50-page full outline samples. But she didn't give me a deadline, so I'm kind of slowly working toward that. But with Guardians, also a dream, that I just had to get down and do it. So I struggle with that sort of long-term planning, that one where I can't see the end in sight. But when it's pretty much just take this or don't, then I take that,
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I have like the utmost respect for someone who can do that because were they like shorter novels, like 60,000 words, 80,000 words?
Yeah, they're between 55 and 60 usually.
Okay. Yeah, that takes usually about 2 months for me to get done, which is I write about 1,000 words a day. I try to get like 1,000 good words a day. So like but I can't do 5,000 words. That's why I'm like, okay, this is how long it's going to take me because doing 5,000 words is like an impossibility for me. One day I did 10,000 words, but usually 2,000 is like my max. Like brain will shut down after 2,000 words, and I need like a 2-hour nap.
I certainly hear you because if I had my way, well, 2 things. If I had my way as far as deadlines and money went, I would take between 3 months to 8 months for a novel. However, because I live in New York City, well, not the city, but I live in New York, on Long Island, which is even more intense price-wise, I need to put out multiple big projects per year to even make rent. So
no,
yeah,
it makes sense. I get it. I mean, my goal has always been like I want to make one graphic novel, one novel a year. Like that's my base minimum thing. Do you have any goals like that are like base minimums, or is it just at this point are you just like taking what comes at you?
As far as freelance, I'm taking what comes to me. And in fact, probably the thing that I've been most criticized for is that people think that I've taken projects with publishers or with titles that don't really fit me. Like, especially ZeneSCOPE books. But what I do is I feel like I can go into those projects and find the me in there and tell a story that I'm proud of within the parameters of that kind of story. Because the thing is, I value my place. I value keeping all the things that I have. So I do take almost every project, unless I'm morally opposed to it. I take almost every project that I'm invited to that pays well enough because I feel that I'm lucky enough to be writing. So I can separate what I do freelance with what I do with my personal publications. Because on the creator-owned front, I just always want at the same time to be working on one that I'm going to publish and to be working on at least having multiple pitches out at once to multiple publishers. So it's pretty much just my kind of always goal that never ends is to have everything going on at once so that there's no sort of a quiet time for me, which isn't like a healthy goal, but business-wise, it's what I need right now.
Right. No, but what you're saying makes sense, especially when you're talking about like taking on projects. When people come to me and like ask me to do projects, or we talk about it, or I talk to my manager about doing a script, the first thing I ask is like, you know who you're asking to do this, right? Like, especially if it's something that's off-brand for me, I say, you know what you're asking, right? Like, they came to me, and if you want this script, these are the things that I've done. Like, I got asked to publish the Left Behind series by somebody at one point, and I was like, there's no way I should do that, because look at all of these things that I do. And like, if you want me to publish a Left Behind series, it's gonna be a much different, book. Like, it's gonna be completely sacrilegious and blasphemous, and I think that's bad. But like, if you have looked at all of my work and you are comfortable with what I've done, and you still want me to do this thing, I totally get taking any project, because like you said, like, these people, especially at ZeneSCOPE, like, they knew what your strengths and weaknesses were. They knew what your worldviews were. Like, they knew the writer they were hiring, is basically what
definitely.
I'm saying.
It's funny that you say the Left Behind series, because the one major thing I turned down was also this very Christian book that was sort of about I shouldn't say too much, but it was about how sinners should be punished. And when I was invited to it, I was like, well, this main character would punish me probably. So I'm not going to write this book that sort of demonizes the idea of sin, when I don't think sin is a thing, you know? So that one I said no to. And then I was offered by the same team this fun sci-fi book. So I think that it's about finding what you can do. You know, I can do a lot. There's certain things that I choose not to do because I couldn't do it morally. But beyond that, yeah.
Right, and I mean, I always ask. I also, like, so I asked the question, like, you know who you're asking, right, to do this book? Like, this is a YA book. My YA books are about, like, death, destruction, and, like, grief and loss, and, like, pain and, like, hurt. And, like, if that's the writer you want, cool, let's talk. And then when they say, yeah, that's the writer I want, then you give us pitch, and they go, I'll hire you, and you go, okay, cool, so you know what I do, you know I'm the writer I want, and you like the pitch. So this is on you at this point. You know, like, I never understood the whole, like, why DC complains about Zack Snyder at all, or why they would ever, because, like, they knew the fuck director they were getting. Like, they saw his movies. Like, why would you expect him to be any different? I mean, I'm more like DC fans. They're like, oh no, this is going to be the one that's better than all of the other Zack Snyder movies. You're like, no, this is they hired Zack Snyder knowing his sensibility, and then Zack Snyder delivered exactly what his sensibility is. It's like, this is not magic. This is not like a trick that they're running on you, you know? Like, Christopher Nolan delivered the exact kind of movie I would expect Christopher Nolan to deliver after watching Pi.
It's true. I feel like, though, people think that they can get people fired. So I think that when they complain that way, the idea is that they want Zack Snyder to either be disempowered to do his vision or to be fired, which is, I think, kind of a sad state of criticism, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I understand loving this is why I like working on just my own shit, and I don't have a lot of, like, public domain characters or anything in any of my stories, because it's like, well, like, I created it. I can fuck it up however you want. If you think I fucked it up, like, don't read my stuff, because if this is coming from me, like, I get, like, you bring me into Guardians of the Galaxy, and, like, I make it a wholly depressing, like, a treatise on religion. All right, I get how you can be kind of mad about that. You should still be mad at Marvel for hiring me to make, like, this treatise on religion that they hired me to do, seeing my work. But I get how you have this visceral reaction to, like, Captain America, what's happening with Captain America now. Like, I don't think you should really be mad at Nick Spencer for it, because, like, you know who Nick Spencer is? Like, you see his Twitter feed, you know who Nick Spencer is? Like, don't be mad at Nick Spencer for making a Nick Spencer book. Maybe you can be mad at Marvel for hiring Nick Spencer to make that book, but, like, you shouldn't be mad at the creator for doing the thing that he does.
Totally. Also on that front too, I've seen people critiquing Nick Spencer, among other writers, for the way that covers are drawn, and it so lends this sort of importance to the writer that doesn't exist. I've never had a say in any cover that I haven't published ever. It's all been, I mean, creator-owned books, of course, but I've suggested ideas for covers. ZeneSCOPE mostly hated my cover ideas, but I was critiqued for many of those covers, and I see Nick Spencer getting critiqued for variant covers on Secret Empire, and I just want to go, he has no say. He has no say in that. So when I published Destiny New York, that cover was our idea, myself and my co-creator. That you can critique us for. But these books that we don't own, I think that people have to start removing the critique of the writer to some extent,
Yeah, I mean, people are. I was talking about this with the previous guest that we had on, and it's like I think that more people need to be more aware of the entire supply chain,
Right.
and like try to like maybe make a thing, even if it's not a good thing. Like I don't care if it's good or bad, but if you can if you can take a pen, fold it in 8 pieces, and then fold take a piece of paper, fold it in 8 pieces, and then like draw a story, go to a show and sell that story, you will understand just a way better the entire supply chain, and maybe you would be less critical because you understood the pieces. Now, like we are consumers. We don't want to. We just want the thing that we want. But I do think that a lot of the criticism comes from this idea that like we're not, like, most of the people reading the thing aren't making the thing.
Right, totally. And I think that there is this misconception that it all stems from the writer, and that does lend too much importance to the writer, because if you read a comic, bad art looks like bad writing. Bad colors looks like bad art and bad writing. Bad letters looks like bad writing. It all comes back to this thing that it's very hard to see where something went wrong. And things can often go wrong. It's a miracle that any good comics exist at all. That there are so many moving pieces that you have to get right, that have to be in sync to make great content. And I think that people, like you said, if they try to do it themselves, if they look at comics more critically, and instead of saying, I hate this, ask, why do I hate this, and examine why, examine what went wrong. I think that could lead to more people at least giving more nuanced criticism.
Absolutely. There's a great quote that I use that I think about all the time, especially when I see something that I don't like. I just like breathe and I go, making this thing was almost impossibly difficult. Like even the worst thing that I've ever seen required an almost impossible level of effort to get out. And like I'm sure the people that made this at the end like didn't want it to be bad, but like there's so many things that can go wrong at so many stages that, man, like like thinking like that and like knowing how hard the process is totally helps me maybe buffer over some of the worst stories that I've ever read, and kind of and like even knowing how quickly someone has to turn around an issue. Like a artist has 5 weeks at Marvel to turn around an issue. It's probably less in smaller companies. And then I go to these events and someone's like, look at this panel right here, this like little throwaway panel. Like, look at this. They just took they didn't even like try in this panel. And I flip the thing to like a beautiful 2-page spread, and I'm like, yeah, like sometimes like there's only so many hours in a day. And like when people realize that, they go, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to be more forgiving of all this stuff.
Yeah, because I think that people see art as this sort of ethereal thing, this thing that we have to be true to. And it's to some extent, sure. But people forget that it's a business, it's a job, and when we're critiqued, for instance, for taking freelance gigs that we don't fit with. I mean, not to say that someone doesn't fit on the gig. I think that Nick Spencer could fit on Cap fine. I think that I fit on the books that I've been hired on fine. But some people don't. I think that people forget that we need to pay bills, that when they go to their day job, this is us going to our job. And I think that all criticism can be valid, but I think it could just do everyone a great service if we stop just looking for the quick reaction and start examining stories again. Start looking at stories and creators with more depth.
I totally agree with that. Okay, so let's talk as we reach our 40th minute, roughly, about how you actually go about finding gigs. Can you give some tips for the other freelancers out there about how you've been able to be so prolific, or how you've been able to maneuver between these companies?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can give the sneakiest tip, and I can give the most honest tip. The sneakiest tip is that almost every editor in every company has a form email. Find out that company's form email, and I did this by contacting someone at ZeneSCOPE 6 years ago for a sales question. I didn't have a sales question. My buddy reached out to them for me for this fake question, got their form email, and I plugged Ralph Tedesco's name into it. And that got me over 250 gigs. Just that stupid idea. And that idea has worked with almost every company. I've emailed Vertigo using that idea. I've emailed everyone that I've almost talked to using that stupid idea. And I would never give those emails out, but I think that part of the way that companies filter people is that companies know how easy they are to find. They're right there. Everyone is right there, and no one's looking for them. So that's a way too, is just reaching out and finding people, showing people that you're actually looking. On the other way, and this is hard for me in some ways because some days I'm good at doing this, and other days it's hard to track. I just can't do it sometimes. Is going to conventions and finding an editor who has time, sitting with them, and creating a relationship. It's not always the easiest thing to do. Some are more receptive than others. But the way that I got my current Avatar gigs is that I knew two of the guys there for a while. I would just go there, say hi, buy books every convention for 5 years. And then this past year, I emailed the guy who owns Avatar, William, and I said, hey, I've been seeing you at cons. It's always great to talk to you. I am looking for work, so if you ever need anything, just let me know. And that day, he offered a gig, and now I'm working on multiple books for him. And with other books, like the Joe Book stuff, the novels, the comics there, that's just keeping up. I did the Charm novels. They invited me on Marvel things, and while I was doing those novels for them, every time I have a lull in my work or want to do something else, I'll say, hey, do you have any comics work? Do you have any more novels coming up? Just to be sure I have work coming up. So it's just doing multiple things at once. It's fostering these friendships with people who work at companies, even people who aren't editors, just getting in with the company in some way. And it's just asking a lot. It's asking to a point where you're not annoying, but you're persistent.
Right. I love that you talked about specifically buying books at shows from editors and companies that you want to work with, because it's one of the things that I always talk about at shows. I know the people that come and then they buy something for me when they ask a bunch of questions. And it's not like I am greedy. I don't really I do care. I would like to make that $30, but it's more like you're showing that you like the product, that you're invested in the product, and if you've gotten advice that advice is worth something to you, and you would be, it's amazing how somebody could spend 30 minutes picking your brain and then being like, thanks, buddy, peace out, and you're like,
yep,
what? Didn't sign up for a mailing list, didn't sign up for anything, sat there for half an hour, bought nothing, saw that other people were coming to my tables and still didn't move. And again, I don't think it's I don't think it's a requirement. Like, I'm not saying that, like, you must buy something at my table, but I certainly take a more active interest when somebody goes, fuck it, I'm going to buy $70 worth of books after you talk to me for 10 minutes and sign up for your mailing list and do all this stuff, than someone who, like, takes 30 minutes of my time and then walks away. Like, that's human nature. Like, those people are more invested in me and find more value in me than the people that don't. And if you want to show that you are committed to working with somebody, or you want to work with somebody, maybe you should buy the things that they make so that, like, eventually they might hire you.
Absolutely. Because I think that if you do that on a base level, you stand out. Because the people who will talk to you forever and then move on, I think outnumber the people who will talk to you forever about process and then buy the books. Because most people are either customers or people who want to work in comics. The people who want to work in comics, I feel, largely don't buy the books yet. They might in the future, but I have experienced a lot more of people asking me for advice and then walking away than someone asking for advice and then buying the books. So I think that if you do that, if you show that you're interested, show that you want to foster something there, and buy the books, a small book, a $3 book, $4 book, if you have that, do that. Because that's what I did. I went to cons with all the money I had, and I spent all of it on every booth that I spoke to a person at. Because if you don't buy something and waste their time, I shouldn't say waste their time, but if you use them for their time, if you pump them for questions and advice and then do nothing for them, it doesn't show that you're interested in them. It shows that you're interested in yourself. And that's cool, but you should be interested in fostering something there, I think.
And the community. Yes. But I'll give you the best reason that I ever give somebody to, like, buy the book. And I do this at every panel I've ever done. And you can take this and you can steal this 2-pad if you want and do it. Is because you've just spent time asking questions and getting advice from a human being that has about a 50-50 chance of giving good advice and shitty advice. So you want to buy the book, if for no other reason than you want to know whether the advice should be followed or not, for your own benefit. I cannot tell you how many books that I've bought in my life when I went back, when I went back and I was like, oh, that's so disappointing. This advice was so good about, like, how to write a story, but this book is so bad that, like, I probably am not going to follow this advice. I might follow it until I find another person that has a good story, but you then know that you haven't wasted your time. So I always say the reason that you should buy books from me are twofold. The first, I make money. This is how I make my fucking living. So buy books from me because, like, I need to make a living. But the other reason is because you just spent an hour or 10 minutes or 5 minutes talking to me, and you want to make sure you didn't waste your time.
Totally agree.
And I would do the same thing. I would bring like $200, $500 to a show, and then just spend it all over the place. Sometimes at San Diego, I had this little messenger bag, and I would go to the show and back to my hotel like 2 or 3 times a day just to drop stuff off.
Oh God, Dude, all right. So I had 2 messenger bags myself when I used to go to New York Comic Con before I was published, and I would load those things up. My back would be killing me because I would walk from the con to the train to go home, and I would love it. I would love that pain because I was walking with what I thought was my future, with all this advice, great content, and I would leave full. And those were my best experiences at cons ever. I mean, I love to sell. I love to make money, but to leave with that hope of what I could do next was just amazing.
Yeah, and on top of that, what I would always do when I got home, I'd read all the books and I put them in 3 piles. They were okay, or like they were awesome and cool. This book was this book was awesome and they were cool. This book was awesome and I don't know about them, or like shit. And I would make sure to email every person or like contact every person whose book I had and be like, hey, I bought your book. I thought it was great. And then, guess what? I started getting like people friending me on Facebook and like email exchanges. And like, there's two ways that you can make it in a business. You can work your way in, or you can buy your way in. And you have to work your way in because you got to be great. But like, you can definitely ease the transition by like spending a bunch of money at shows and like showing up at shows.
Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not tricksy. So okay, so let's transition now into the next thing, the thing that you're on the show for. You, right before we went on air, sent me an image of your new project that is coming to Kickstarter. Yes. And I looked at it very briefly, and I had to put it down because I didn't want to say "holy fuck" like then. But like, this thing is fucking beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little about it? Then we can talk about it's not podcasts are a lot of things. A visual medium, they are not.
Okay, so this book, it's called Clonsters, and what it is, it's this upcoming all ages book. It's created by my fiance Amy Grandfors, and I think by the time that the book comes out, she'll be Amy Shand because we're getting married in August, and we're co-writing it together. It's drawn by Vanessa Cardinale. Who we just booked. So we have a few amazing pieces coming in, all of which I'm going to debut what is now for us tomorrow, May 4th. So it'll be out quite soon online. It's so it's called Clonsters. It's this sort of like Adventure Time meets Pixar adventure that's about this world populated by these strange creatures. And there are many different breeds of creatures called Earth Nuggets, Sea Nuggets, and Splats. And the Earth Nuggets keep the Splats as pets and have sort of domesticated them. And some Earth Nuggets abuse them for their horns because they have these magical horns that stick out. And the journey of the book is this one character, Polly, she's the lead. She finds out a secret about the Splats that makes them seem like they're much more than pets, and she goes on this journey to spread the word of the truth about Splats.
That sounds amazing. Now the art seems amazing. It says fucking incredible too. Like, I love it so much. But what really caught me was the coloring of the book. Can you talk? Did the artist do everything, or did you have a different colorist?
Yeah, she did everything. She tested for that one. She sent in samples, and we had so many great artists. We had artists that I've been a fan of for years submit samples for this book. And Vanessa was a new person that I hadn't heard of before. She's done great work, but she and I had never spoken before this. So when Amy and I were searching for the right choice for this, she was a clear number one. Everyone else was awesome, and I would say most were as good in some ways, but her style was specifically what we were looking for. It was beyond the perfect fit. So as soon as we saw her, there was really no conversation about anyone else. And we had her do this one page. She's doing a cover now, and we're pretty much just diving right into it.
That's awesome, and I love that still, after all of this time, are still getting samples and still getting tests, because what usually happens with new writers is they go with the first person that like shows interest in drawing their book instead of like really having a measured approach to this. Can you talk about the testing and how you actually go about your testing pages for a second?
Yeah. So this kind of comes from my years as editor at ZeneSCOPE. I would always, the rule was that I had to pretty much prove my choice to the other editors. So I would have artist tests, and then we would argue about who was the best one. And then in the end, we would pick the choice for the book. Now that the choices are more in my hands, I'm still using that same idea in that I don't want multiple artists to do tests at the same time for a smaller project, because I know that the time to take a page is very, very valuable. You know, it can take a whole day or more, and to have all right, so for Clonsters, we had 12 main contenders who I picked from, I think, 45 submissions. We had 12 people who could do it. So instead of having 12 people test and having 12 pages come in and 12 days, well, 11 days wasted, I thought, well, our best choice here, the closest to what we need, is Vanessa. So I'm going to have her test alone. And if this is what we're looking for exactly, we'll give her the gig as is. If it wasn't, if it was missing something, we'd have multiple tests going on. But because she did it exactly, I didn't want to waste anyone else's time, and I did it. However, for a book like Destiny New York, where I have multiple artists doing stories in the back, with that one, I'll have some more testing going on at once, because that is an established sort of universe with drawn characters. But with Clonsters, Vanessa was the first one drawing these creatures, because what I didn't mention about Clonsters is that the way that Amy created them is that she is a sculptor. She makes clay creations. And she made this race of Clonsters, who are her main brand of creations, called Earth Nuggets. And when Vanessa came onto Clonsters, the reference that she used were the clay creations from Amy. So she was doing it based on that. So because she ended up nailing what Amy had done, she was a shoo-in for that one.
Awesome. And this is coming to Kickstarter later this month, right?
Yes, actually very soon. We decided with Destiny New York, we had this long build-up because it was a much bigger project. Destiny New York was a $20,000 goal, and that we had the full first issue. But with Clonsters, because Amy has had the toys out for a while, and because it's a smaller scale project, we're gonna put it out next week, and it's gonna be going next week through the end of the month, and we're gonna be pushing it hard. And instead of doing this longer build-up, we're gonna be dropping information about it during the campaign. So we have hopefully spikes of activity at the beginning, all through the middle as we announce more things about it, and then in the end for those last 2 days.
Awesome. That's a very interesting tactic. I am excited to see how that works out for you. Are there any other projects that you're working on?
Yeah, totally, man. I have Destiny New York Volume 2. That's going to be out on Kickstarter September 1st. I'm working on other books coming up for my company, Continuity Entertainment. I'm working on some freelance stuff for Avatar Boundless. I'm doing hopefully some new novels for Joe Books. And yeah, that's about it right now.
Does that mean that Destiny New York is the Volume 1 is going to ship soon?
Yes, it's going to ship. All right, so it arrives at Kraken May 19th. It's going to be hopefully at my house within 5 to 8 days. And as soon as it arrives, I have a team dedicated to just getting that thing out. It's going to be shipping out immediately. Going to be pretty much just going hard that week and into the next week. But we don't want to sit around with all these unshipped rewards. Our goal is to never have people wondering where the stuff is. Just get it right out. And that's why as soon as we had the PDF, we had sent that out. You know, I do want people who pledged for the print copy to read that, but I knew that some people didn't want to wait. So as soon as we had that, it was blasted out. As soon as the actual books are here, I'm excited to mail those. You know, people see it as a chore, and I understand why it is a chore, but I want it out. And I want to spend that time shipping it out as soon as possible. So yeah, awesome. Very soon.
Yes, I'm so excited for that one. Yeah, but I mean, I get it, man, because you can't really sell it until you ship to the backers. So like, no other reason, like, you want to get that shit out. So like, you got like the best part is the last moment that the last fucking book ships.
Yes.
Well, like, there's always gonna be some stragglers who just for some reason didn't fill out their reward, and then like 2 years later they complain they never got their reward even though they didn't. But like, aside from that, I mean, like, when you ship out like all the people who like had all the time in the world to fill it out, and you're like, all right, when is the next show? How do I pre-order this thing? What can I do so I can make money on this thing that now that I've just spent the last 3 months or 2 weeks like pouring money into?
Yes.
So I get that. Okay, is there anything that we've covered that is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to impart to the audience?
I would just say take a look out for Clonsters. It's coming to Kickstarter. It's going to be up here very soon. It's a book that's near and dear to both Amy and my heart. So yeah, check it out.
Awesome. All right, last thing. Give us a piece of advice you haven't given already. Where we can find you online, and then we'll say goodbye.
I would say that life is happening now. You know, as creative types, as consumers, we always look forward to what's coming out, to what we're going to do next. All I would say is that live in the now, appreciate what's going on now, and do your best work right now.
Awesome. I love it. And how can we find you online?
I'm at Pat Shan pretty much everywhere. Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
Cool. Thank you so much for being on, Pat. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed that one with Pat Shand. If you did, go thank him online, check out his work, and pledge to his Kickstarter, Clonsters, which is live right now as this goes live. And if you enjoyed this episode, please head on over to iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Rate, review, and subscribe today. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss any new episodes, and it helps us find new fans. Finally, if you're a writer or creator who wants to make more money selling books, head on over to our new Facebook group, Writers and Creators Making Money Selling Books. Either just type that into Facebook or head on over to writingandsellingcommunity.com and you'll be redirected right now. Thanks a lot, wannabes and creators. I will see you next time.